Hi, and welcome to Rethink Health's podcast. I'm Nicole, and with me today I have a man with a very impressive number of 12 world records, Tyron Venter, the extreme long distance swimmer. Today we're going to be speaking about mental health in extreme sports. Thank you for joining us today, Tyron. Okay, I first met Tyron a year ago when he came to me for assistance with muscle imbalance and backache, but I'll get to that later. Tyron, you set your first world record in 2012, and from there you've just gone from strength to strength. If you had to choose 3 world records that you are most proud of, what would they be and when were they set?
Firstly, thank you for having me today, Nicole. If I had to look back on it, 3 that I would choose would probably have to be the first ones in 2012, having done the double Robben Island and the triple in the same day, in the same swim. That was obviously mind-blowing because it was my first ones and it was a little bit unexpected. Then I would go on to a shorter one, but it was a Robben Island crossing that was done butterfly. That would probably be number 2 because it was memorable. And then the third one would probably be, it's tough between them to choose, but the quadruple was something that was very long, very extreme, and something that no one really thought could be done. So that would probably be my number 1, the quadruple Robben Island blowboat crossing.
Sorry, I must interrupt you there. You said quadruple.
Yeah.
So that means you swam from Big Bay to Robben Island, to Big Bay to Robben Island, back to Big Bay, all in one day without stopping.
Yeah. Pretty much. It sounds a little bit more hectic when you say it like that, but yes, it was the quadruple. It's not the recommended. So when you normally do a Robben Island crossing, it's a one way. Now we were doing the exponential difference of 1,000 people have done a Robben Island crossing. Double Robben Island crossing has only been done about 100 times. Then the triple crossing had only been done less than 5 times. Less than 5 people had done it. So we were trying to push the limit on what could be done and what people thought was possible, kind of trying to raise the ceiling. But yeah, that was a tough one.
That really does sound impossible, but clearly not because you've done it.
So it's difficult to explain. When you're doing a swim like that, there's so many the factors that you take into account. Normal crossings, you're working on tides, you're working on winds, you're working on the wave height. With a quadruple, you're swimming against the tide for half of the swim and then with the tide. So what's assisting you one way is hampering you on the way back. And because it's a 6-hour plus swim, you don't have the luxury of set conditions. The conditions change. Everything's a variable. So you've got to try and focus your mind on what is controllable, what's in your control, and what is external forces, what you cannot control. And the things that you cannot control, you have to let go of and kind of roll with the punches. But at the same time, as that's easy to say, it's very difficult when you're in the water and you're tired and fatigued and your mind is so far stretched in terms of physical capability of what you're doing that when something then starts to go wrong or the conditions change to more unfavorable conditions, that you need to apply your mind to that as well. So it was a very draining swim. I would never ever say that it was one of the easier swims. I must say I was extremely blessed to do it the way I had done it. But the mental aftermath of a swim like that was very draining, and then that led on to the emotional. It was just it was very, very draining post swim and for a little while afterwards to regain my focus.
Okay. And did you say that you swam butterfly?
That was the other one that was very memorable. We did a butterfly swim. Obviously, I want to do swims and I want to push the limits and I want to extend what people have thought is possible. So there had been people that have done butterfly swims before. I just thought that I could possibly do it a little bit quicker. Being a previous butterfly swimmer when I did my competitive pool swimming. So that was a spur of the moment decision one day. Decided to do it with a few training partners. They did freestyle and I just followed behind them. And it turned out to be a rather exciting venture. It's opened a few doors for me in terms of possibilities of different swims, So I'm very, very happy that I got that one done.
Sure. Yeah, that swimming butterfly, that must have taken, obviously taken incredible talent and power, but also an immense amount of mental strength to get through that.
The physicality of it is a lot different to normal freestyle swimming. So to run you through a few little aspects of it, in butterfly there's a recovery, but your recovery in butterfly is when your hands and head are in the water. So you're underwater for the recovery, which is all good and well, but the longer your recovery, the longer you are submerged. So if you come up and you mistime your breathing in your active part of your stroke, you are then swallowing water, and that doesn't help you for your next recovery stroke. So there were a few little niggles along the way. You do choke, you do cough, but I found that the flexibility was the biggest part of it.
Okay.
Being as good as I was back then, because it was quite a while ago, before I picked up any issues, my back and hip flexibility was really good, so I could really clear the surface of the water to get a good breath, and then really get a good forward momentum, carry my momentum with the dive in. So it helped a lot. Mentally, very, very tough, because you go to a swimming pool and you train and you swim from wall to wall, and when you get to the wall, you got that little 2-3 second just, thank you, I'm here, let me turn around and do it again. When you got to the sea, I hadn't completely transitioned to the fact that there was no stopping and you can't break stroke. So that was just, I started to implement little things I'd learned from my long marathon days of just counting your strokes. You find a way to make it through the next 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, and eventually you hopefully land on the other side.
Sure, okay. So extreme long distance swimming is not that captivating to watch, sorry Tyron, but it's a lot more exciting to sit in a stadium and cheer the Chads and Rakes along, because in 2 minutes it's over.
So I get that people don't enjoy it, and I'm the first one to say that it's not. What they do is, I must just say, what Rake and Chad and all the elite athletes, what they do is phenomenal, and their races are visualized. So when you start training for competitive pool swimming, you visualize. So to take, for instance, when Tatiana did her world record now, I'm pretty sure that she would have spent many an hour visualizing every aspect of the swim, the dive, the start, the underwaters, the split timing, and that is what you have to do as a professional athlete. It's a little bit different for marathon swimming, because you can't visualize every aspect of your swim for a 6-hour swim. You don't have 6 hours in the day to visualize. So where we fall short there is you have to start making mental contingencies for in case something goes wrong. So it's not very fun to watch, but while you're in the water doing a swim like this, funnily enough, it is mentally stimulating. You never ever bored or black out or think of like a blank moment where you have nothing to talk about or think about while you're alone in the water. But if you ask me now, sitting here, what I thought about, I couldn't run you through the 9 hours I was in the water. I couldn't tell you what I thought about, but the whole way through, my mind was active. So as a spectator sport, I don't think it's going to win many followers, but as an individual doing it, there is a lot that goes through your mind in terms of what's happening, and a lot of self-prep and talking. What a lot of people don't understand is when you're in a swimming pool doing something for a minute, 2 minutes, the adrenaline carries you through most of it. It's very quick, and if something does go wrong, yes, you have plans to fix it. However, when something goes wrong on a long swim, that sticks in your mind, and that, I always call it the mustard seed. It's the smallest little thing. When you have a little niggle in your arm, 10 strokes later, that mustard seed's a mountain, and you're starting to think that you have an injury or a problem, and the longer your swim is to completion, the bigger that problem grows. So that's where you have to kind of figure out mentally what you're going to do to overcome this issue or assess the problem at hand. So it's two very different, but really mentally challenging in both. I can't say one would be easier, one's better. They are, to be an elite sportsman or a marathon athlete of any kind, it takes a certain type of mentality going into it.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that, definitely. Obviously, with the extreme long distance swimming, you're alone for most of the time, and mentally that must, to have to push through the exhaustion and the pain. I'm assuming that there's pain. Yes.
Very much so.
Okay. Yeah. So for hours and hours, it really must be hard. And the thing is, you don't even have that crowd of people that are cheering you along and screaming your name when you arrive by the beach.
So the pain is there, the cold, the pain, but the one thing that I must say is that but it's a personal preference. You could get 100 marathon swimmers here and they might have different opinions, but when I sit on this side of the camera and I tell you now that having a lot of people and having the spectators there and the cheering like they would in the crowds at like an Olympic Games, I wouldn't want it. When you're doing a long swim, the problem is there's so many variables that can change that are outside of your scope of control, that adding that to it is just, it's another thing. So, for instance, if you jump into a swim and you're planning to do a quadruple, you don't know what the weather conditions are, so that's already a given. But the one thing that does change is you could swim into a school of jellyfish. Now, this is outside of your control. Sure. Now you need to start to focus and think of how you're going to get through this challenge. And it's not the same solution to the jellyfish as what I would use to a cold patch in the water. So when it starts getting colder, you use a different technique. When I have people on the boat for a long marathon swim, I'm very selective in who's on the boat with your support. Anything that they do on the boat starts to fuel that negativity in your brain, because your mind is trying to tell you you're in cold water, you're pushing your body too far, and your body's natural survival instinct is to get out. So at any opportunity, it will start playing tricks on you. So, for instance, I have 3 people on the boat. I have the skipper, I have a support, and I have a watcher. Now, if any one of those 3 people happen to laugh, and I see them laugh or smiling, in my brain, the little mustard seed that grows is, what are they smiling at? It doesn't ever occur to me that, someone might have told a joke. To me, it's, what are they laughing at? Are they laughing at me? Do I look like a fool? What are they doing? Let me get out. So that's the progression of where your brain takes you just to get you back to normality. So now if I had to envision swimming with people cheering, or a lot of people on the beach when you turn around and go back for your next swim, I wouldn't be able to tell you how my mind would process that, because it's obviously never happened. But at the same time, I don't think I'd have the capacity to channel my energy into dealing with that problem and then still the external factors of a swim. So as much as it's not, you don't recognize per se, I think in a way it makes it easier that you can focus on what the job at hand is and not the expectation.
Seeing that it is Mental Health Awareness Month, I thought it's the perfect opportunity for you to share with us how you set your goals, how you stay focused, and how you hold yourself accountable.
So, Nicole, that's actually quite a tough one. So what I get a lot in swimming, and I think a lot of people get it that do professional sports, is, yes, but it's easy for you. What people don't seem to understand is whether you're setting a goal to run your first ever 5 kilometer or you're setting a goal to do a quadruple crossing, the premise is the same. You've got to set a goal that's obtainable. So you've got to start with the parameters of where am I and where do I want to be. And from there, you've got to mold your journey to that goal. So my goals, in essence, when I set my goals, I sit down and say, where am I now and where do I want to be? And a swim would come to mind, or I'd have an idea for a swim, and then I would start planning around that. The same way you would if you're doing your first ever 5K fun run. You plan on, do I need to train endurance? Do I need to train speed? Do I need to train for rough conditions, cold conditions, warm, sea swimming, freshwater swimming? And you start to write down and just understand the parameters of what you are looking for and where you are working within your scope of work. I would suggest to anyone listening to this, if they wanted any advice, would be, first and foremost, foundation phase. You got to build that foundation. So you got to have your flexibility. You got to have your core stability. You've got to be prepared to put in the hard miles that don't require miles, if I can put it that way. So taking it back to when I came to you with my back issue, for the first month, I was doing things that didn't feel like exercises. To a high repetition athlete like myself, I was doing core stability for a back injury, and I didn't ever feel like I was doing a workout. And then slowly but surely I progressed from that foundation to build on that. But I would do foundation work and then understand the parameters of where you're swimming and where you're training or where you're running, location, settings, what you're up against, and slowly have a plan and a contingency plan for all those things. So even though if you're training for cold water swimming, do your cold water training, but have a plan for if it is cold, what is your next step? How do you progress from I'm getting cold to I'm going to be okay, or how I'm going to push through? So break everything up and always have a plan B, because more times than not I've used a plan C, D, and E instead of just a plan B.
And in terms of staying focused and holding yourself accountable, where do you?
It's difficult when you take accountability. When you train marathon swimming, if you don't have a full-time coach or a support structure that helps you, the problem becomes that you become complacent. And that's where it gets tougher, is that when we do swims, for instance, if I've got a big swim coming up, what I like to do is I like to put in markers. So six months out from a big swim, I would say I'm going to do a Robin Island crossing. And this is what I expect to get from the crossing. And I visualize and I write down a mini goal, so a little mini step. And I focus on obviously training for the big swim, but at the same time, I'm aiming for the mini step. And when I get to that swim, I do it and I take notes of it. And I like to, my wife thinks I'm crazy, but I like to chat to her after the swim and just talk through not just necessarily what I was swimming, what I was thinking while I was swimming, and just vocalizing that, I start to see where I'm weaker and where I'm stronger. And then I take that information, I collate it into what I need to do to focus on the next little mini step. And 3 or 4 weeks later, I'll do another swim where I will change the things that I needed to change and implement new things and assess how I am from there. So in terms of accountability, that's how I go from swim to swim to swim to build up before the big swim. The focus, I must say, I'm not talented in terms of swimming ability. So this is very controversial. A lot of people say, yes, but you're good at swim. My true talent and my true blessing, I feel, is that I'm able to stay focused and in the moment and endure. I can suffer better than anyone else can suffer. That's how I like to see it. So it's not that I'm naturally talented in terms of speed or distance or anything like that. It's just that in the moment, the focus, I've trained myself in every aspect of endurance and cold water swimming that I know what to fall back onto. If I'm struggling with a certain thing, there's 5 or 6 different techniques I can use. I can breathing, sighting, visualization, prayer, talking to myself, pep talks. In-game pep talks work really well. But I have these tools that I can use to get myself through. And luckily, and it's a blessing that I don't have too many injuries that I need to physically try and focus on getting through that. It's more just the mental. But those are tools that everyone has, and it just takes time to develop. But again, in your scope and your spectrum of where you are and your goal, you would then start to develop little coping mechanisms and little tools to help you just to stay focused, because you are going to wander through the event or through the swim or through the run, but you want to just wander to a certain point and then be able to rein it in when things get tough.
Okay. Really hoping that others who struggle to exercise regularly can take a little bit of some of your nuggets of wisdom to actually help them set their own goals. Because as you said, and I really feel strongly about it, it doesn't matter whether your goal is to set a world record or if it is to exercise for an hour 4 times a week. It all is based on the same principles.
Yeah. So the biggest thing to understand is we watch these talks and these podcasts and all these things with these amazing people. But what I'd like to actually impart on someone that's watching this today is that I am no different from anyone else. I've chosen a passion, and my passion is swimming, and I've happened to put in a little bit more time and effort into doing it. But if you're setting your goal, regardless of what it is, if you are passionate about that goal, you will find the time to do what you got to do to get to where you want to be. There are days that you're not going to want to, 100%. And my advice to you on that is the days that I least wanted to go swim or do gym are the days that I, funnily enough, did my best ever sessions. So if you can get over the hump of actually putting on your shoes and taking the first step, it's great. But at the end of the day, whatever you choose to do, whatever your goal is, if you're passionate about it, you will achieve it.
So Tyron, for anyone out there that would like to get into long distance swimming, what would your advice be to them?
Nicole, we have to break that down. It's a little bit more complicated, but I'll run you through the process quickly. When you want to start with the endurance swimming, especially in Cape Town, there's an organization that you would go to. It's the Cape Long Distance Swimming Association. However, when you apply and you do your registration, there are two different categories. Now, my advice would be to start with the wetsuit swimming if you are not very prone to cold water, and they both widely recognized in our organization. But you would do the Robben Island crossing, would be the shortest distance, which is the 7.5 kilometers from the island to Big Bay. The baby step would be in a wetsuit. A lot of triathletes are doing it now. And then you would progress to where I'm currently, what we call skins. So all my swims, for them to be ratified as records, you follow the English Channel rules. So you would swim with one swimming cap, one pair of goggles, and a single brief swimming costume, which is, to explain it in the most blatant terms, is the smallest, skimpiest, looks like almost like jockeys. And that is what you need to use to be ratified as a skins cold water swimmer, according to the rules. And from there, you progress as and when your body is comfortable. I firmly believe that if you start with a wetsuit, have the goal of progressing to a skins, just simply because of the complexity and the difficulty of doing skin swimming compared to wetsuit swimming. They're both very difficult. I don't want anyone to think that I don't believe that they're difficult. They are. They're extremely, and I know I can't swim in a wetsuit personally. I overheat and I can't maintain or regulate my body temperature. So that avenue is out for me, so I'm just stuck shivering. But it is very liberating to finish a swim in the skins, and the relaxation of cold water swimming is something that I can't explain or can't describe to someone who hasn't done it. It's really invigorating. As much as it's exhausting and it's tiring and it's mentally and physically and emotionally draining after a swim, the euphoria you get from a skin swim, it lasts easily 5, 6, 7, 10 hours. I'm off my first crossing. I was on cloud 9 for a week. It's a high you keep chasing, and it's very, very addictive in terms of not just doing big Robben Island crossings or further distances, just getting in the cold water every day. You really start to miss it, and it's a very acquired taste, but at the same time, once the bug is bitten, it's bitten.
Okay. Tyron, do you have any swimming brand that you prefer?
Nicole, it was sometime in 2008 that I was doing a lot of racing on the Grand Prix circuit and with the open water swim series that I switched my swimsuits to Arena. The speed suits was just a cut above the rest. Performance-wise and in terms of functionality for marathon swimming, with the cut and the design, it was just it was a no-brainer. I switched the suits and I haven't looked back since then. It was later in the year that I also did a full change to their goggles and their training suits. Their briefs for training were a brilliant cut for my body type, and then the functionality of the race suits and the speed suits were brilliant. I must say that over the last few years, since 2008, the progress made in the speed suits and in general with Arena has been exponential. It's fascinating to me that a company is putting so much time and effort into the progression of our sport that we are leaps and bounds ahead of where we were. Even considering the rule changes, they've really revolutionized the market. And now that they are developing wetsuits for open water swimming, with the new rules that have come in, it has opened the doors to triathletes to really engage in swimming and to really benefit from what we used to get the advantage of the speed suits. So in terms of a product. They are just phenomenal. And then the fact that triathletes and anyone who uses a wetsuit now can really progress their own swimming because of the aid of these things is, for me, it's amazing. And I can't wait to see where it goes and how it helps people and how they develop in the future. It's fascinating to see, and I'm just so excited for the future of swimming with a brand like Arena right behind it, just supporting it all the way.
Then Tyron, I just want to know from you, how important do you think strength and flexibility, or additional strength and flexibility training is for athletes?
My whole career as a professional athlete, we were droned into repetition in my age and my era. And only later on did we find out that strength and conditioning in terms of the minor muscle movements and stability and core was such a vital part that we missed out on. So we never had the massive foundation phase. But coming into 2008, just before and after the Olympic trials, then we actually had a Russian coach who started introducing ballet to us to help us with these things. And from there, my swimming improved exponentially. It's something that you can't do without. Where you are now is nowhere compared to where you could be if you take care of the smaller things. And then, obviously, finishing my career in pool racing and master swimming and taking on the new challenges of the endurance and the extreme swimming, I had forgotten that. I'd let it slip. I still did the basic stretching, the point A to point B, kind of move your arms around, turn your arms over. And then I picked up injuries, and that is why it led me to you. And I must please just say that if it was not for you and the rehabilitation program, I don't see my career as moving forward. I would have called it quits with the pain that I was going through just to get through the most beginner of training sessions. And slowly, with the building up of the muscles and the stability and the core, the things that I didn't know I needed or even had, I now see that there is a future for me to carry on in swimming, and I can do it without the pain that I was going through. So my recovery is so much quicker. My ability to adapt to new challenges, to new swims. Before it was taking me 6 months, and as I'm getting older, it's taking longer. But since I've been doing the core and the stability, I'm adaptable. I can go to a marathon run now, or I can do a marathon swim. And it's a matter of 2-3 weeks notice. I can change it up, and I can come back to swimming again as quick and not take the 6 months it used to take me to get back into it. So I wouldn't think of drawing up any goal or any activity without doing your basic foundation. And that to me is, again, your core stability and your flexibility. That if that is strong, your goal's already 90% achieved.
Okay. So a lot of our Rethink Health members excel in sport, and they use our Pilates and flexibility classes to help maintain their muscle balance, as well as prevent injuries. So many athletes and people in general get injury after injury after injury, okay, and they don't realize that, clearly there's something wrong, and they also don't realize that something can be done in order to prevent this. So, like you say, I think it really is important.
The problem is with a lot of athletes is that they take their coaching on themselves, and this is something that I've noticed over the time that I'm guilty of it. The reason I'm here is because I got referred by someone when I complained too many times that they just said sort it out. But a lot of athletes, because of the pressure and focus of achieving a goal, don't want the external help. And sometimes the external help is Google, and it's not the case. I would advise anyone that if they are struggling or even getting started, start at step one. Crawl before you run. And it's something that I do often now. When I get restarted again, I start from the foundation phase, and it is just, like I said, injuries at this age and this time in my life, I don't have a year, 2 years to come back from. And if you don't come back from it properly, it just reoccurs. So I would advise anyone to start off at the beginning, assess what you need to do, and assess where your weakest areas are. And just so that anyone there that is listening understands, your weakest area might not be a place that you even realize was an area. So get professional help, find out what you need to do, set the goals, set the timeline, and make sure you go and crush those goals.
Okay, thank you so much, Tyron, for your time and for all your advice. I'm sure all our members have found it very valuable. So, yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Nicole, and all the best.
Thank you.